And welcome. Welcome, everyone. This is Impact 2023, our continuing conversation where we talk about everything from race, religion, current events, all the hot topics that are out and about. And we talk about it from a Christian standpoint. And as always, we have our conversation, and this is a safe place, an open place where you can have your conversation and your opinions. And we ask that you share those opinions with us by typing your questions and your comments into the comments section and letting us know how you feel about the topics that we discuss. And so, as always, we hop into these topics, but we want to say that this is a conversation. So, whatever you put forth, and we will address, and it goes back and forth. And so, again, we appreciate those the input. And as oftentimes we hop right into it, and we're no different today. Recently we've been doing a lot less. A lot of times we do some heavy topics, and some topics that really hit hard. And these have been a little bit less heavy and a little bit more financially based. There's a little bit of nuance here. We've been talking about a lot of things. What we're not talking about is generational wealth, but we're talking about a lot of different nuanced topics, and this one is no different. So what has happened, for those of you who may not really stay in tune to what's going on out in the business world, but what has recently happened is two banks, and these are not major banks like Bank of America, national banks, but regional banks. So they're still very large banks, but two regional banks here in the United States have just failed. And when the banks fail, basically they're no longer able to fulfill their obligations, their financial obligations. They put everybody's money at risk that has deposits in the bank, and usually the whole entire country, depending on the size of the bank, gets a little nervous because they have this thing called contagion, where failures of one bank or one major institution can shake the faith and the confidence of people throughout the whole entire nation and whole entire country. And what the fear is that people will lose faith and confidence, and there'll possibly be a run on banks. That is a situation where people start to pull their money out of banks or pull their money out of institutions and think that it's safer to do what they said back in the day, which is put your money under the mattress or keep your money in the house. And if that happened and they started pulling money out of financial institutions, we're in some trouble. As a result, the Federal Reserve, that's who presides over all the banks, the federal lending institution that lends actually to the banks and has the regulations for the banks, made sure that one of the larger banks based out in the West Coast area was going to be secured, and so that they would be able to fulfill their obligations. And I say obligations because it's different things. It's not just making sure that the people who, regular people, that their money is still there, but there's other things, all of their loans that they do, all of the interbank loans, when banks loan to one another, the mortgages that they have, the different investments they have, just making sure that that the obligations and the commitments that the banks had to people will be honored. We discussed this here because we're back here again in a situation where we were just not too long ago. I mean, it's 2023, but for those of us who have a little bit of age under us, remember that not too long ago in 2007, 2008, we had bank failures, multiple bank failures, some large bank failures, which led to the financial crisis of that time, led to the Great Recession, as they called it. And our economy crashed, and well, not crashed, but our economy went south, and then a lot of people started losing their homes. We had a big credit crisis, and so all of that happened back then, not that long ago. And then for those of us who are a little longer in the tooth, we remember back into the 80s when they had the credit and loan scandal, or when those banks, the little savings and loan banks or savings and loans institutions started to crash. And so that happened. We had 2008. Now, currently, right now, we're back in the same boat where we have these large regional banks that are failing. This is important a little bit. To the average Joe, it's important to us a little bit because we need to just pay attention to make sure our money's going to be safe. But what it does, though, is it brings back the question to different groups. As a Black man, it brings question to me and to say, well, you know, we talked about it in 2020. Where are the Black banks? Why don't we have Black banks? Those are the places that should I be trusting my money in Black banks? And then it also brings to the churches, the faith community, and the nonprofit community, I'll put that in there as well, is what is our responsibility when it comes to banking? How come we don't have our own banks? Should we have our own banks? Where is the line drawn where we're talking about should we be getting involved in financials and money? And so we have, some churches, some organizations who are really heavy in the money. And so they're like, oh, we're going to have financial seminars in the church. We're going to do this in the church, which is great. Then you have other institutions where all they talk about is money. And they talk about it from a different standpoint of how much can you get financially blessed? And you got to be rolling with this kind of, this kind of house, this kind of car, this kind of job, all this kind of stuff. And they're talking about success in this terms of keeping up with the Joneses type situation. But then there's just, what is our responsibility to people just to be financially wise? I had not talked to, but read some things of people in the Jewish community when they were talking about their faith. And oftentimes that they use the Bible as a financial tool as well as a tool for their faith. Because there's a lot of financial advice. It's subtle financial advice throughout the Bible. And so they teach that. Well, according to this article, they teach that hand in hand with when they're teaching your faith. So they're teaching you how to be responsible with your money. Like there are a lot of books out there that are written how to be a financially minded Christian and looking into the principles that are taught in the Bible of what you should do with your money. It comes to us. One, as churches, should we be more responsible with money? Should we be banking institutions? Should we be giving out loans to our people, or making sure they can get loans and kind of bridging the gap between a lot of our people who may not have the credit and the funds and things like that to get houses and to get cars and to get the things that they need and the necessities? Should we really get into that? Or is that not our place? Should we get more into financial education to make sure that the people who we have coming in are going to be financially responsible? Is that our place? Is that our goal? There's been a lot of times within different communities, I'll say in the Black community, where we talk about the fact that we have been undereducated when it comes to our finances. Like, we know our numbers, we can our 1, 2, 3s, and we can do all of that. But do we really know about investing? Do we really know about banking? Do we really know about the things that we should be doing? And then more so, if we are the alternative community, in the sense of, we're Christians, we don't really, as much as we're in the world, we don't really abide by the same rules, in the sense of, we don't have the same logic. But should we then be trying to reinforce that in the sense of maybe there shouldn't be traditional banking, or we should kind of open up to some other things? Why do we get loans? Always feel like we need to get loans from banks. Can we not loan from one another? And legally, we can. Legally, we can write notes to one another and help out one another. Why are we running to get insurance, this way instead of maybe insuring one another? There's a couple of them, but one, there's a couple of popular healthcare programs that churches have sponsored. Now, I'm not a big fan of those. I'm gonna be honest with you, because what they're it's great that they're doing that, but they're also trying to be restrictive and trying to restrict healthcare through their sponsorship. But the idea of coming together and taking care of one another, instead of going out to someone else that you don't know and putting out money that you don't know and possibly having a bank failure, but the idea of taking care of one another is something that they're utilizing and they're using. Churches can come together and we can all pool our funds together and we can take care of one another. And again, if like the books that have been written or like the articles that I was referencing earlier when we were talking about different kind of communities, there is biblical basis for that. Bringing everything that we have so that nobody will be without. So is that a place that we need to go? Is that something that we should be looking into? Where is the line? What's the opinion on that? Because there's a lot of different opinions out there about what the role of church is and how much we should be talking about money. Comment. There was a time when many of the larger churches operated credit unions. Over the past years, most of these credit unions were turned over to larger institutions. Some Christian, most just larger credit unions. Yeah. That brings up another little issue is it's the sellout. We always, and not sellout in the sense of, maybe some other terms that people use, but sellout in the fact that we always sell out. We if somebody comes in here and they want to write us a check, whether it be the church, I'm always talking about it heavy on the Black community. If somebody comes in there and they offer us a check, we gonna sell it out. We gonna get rid of it. We gonna get rid of it so fast. We're gonna get this cash and we're gonna spend it and we're gonna be happy with us and our family. But I think that there's a responsibility sometimes when you have these institutions. So these churches that made credit unions and were able to take care of people in their communities, were able to make decisions about people in their communities. So they may not have been, you have people who are not credit worthy, but you're going to sow a seed into their life. And you have the ability to do that because y'all have, the ability of financial responsibility where y'all can sow seeds into people's lives. You give up all of that in order to get a check. Now you may do some great things with that check. You get that payday, you sell out, and you can go out of here and you can buy a bunch of houses and put people in them, or you can, donate to a whole bunch of different causes, but you'll never have what you had before. You'll never have that power and ability to change people's lives in that sense. I grew up in the hip hop era. One of the things the popular songs is Money, Power, Respect. And they were like, first you get the money, then you get the power, then you get the respect. But I would say we kind of got it out of order. The thing that I think is important in that is the power. And not power that you have to flex your power, but the power to be able to influence and change other people's lives. The power to be able to help somebody out who is almost there and you're able to push them over the top. And so I do believe, and I believe that churches should look into having credit unions, being able to loan, being able to operate in those fashions, not to make money, but and not even the loan part, less that, but even being able to facilitate people to be able to loan to one another, that we can be community in more ways than one. I think about the fact that there's a lot of families out here who have money, and even though these families have money, you still have people in the families who are going out and getting a car loan. Like, why would I get a car loan from a bank who's going to charge me? And they sometimes some outrageous amounts, 20%, 30%, 50%, APR, annual percentage yield. Why are you going out there when you could loan from your family? You're like, well, what if they default and you got to do this and got to do that? You can always get rid of the loan. But why do you send somebody out into the world to do the things that you can do? Like, if I have enough money, there's no way my son would ever have to go out and get a loan for anything. Now, I'm not going to just buy him stuff, but he could definitely, I'd rather you work out a loan or a note or a deal with me than have to go out here and work out a loan or a deal to a stranger. I'd rather you have an obligation to me, a financial obligation to me, somebody who cares about you, than a financial obligation to somebody else who cares nothing about you. Whereas you fall on hard times, I can sit back and look at your situation and say, well, I know you're going to pay me eventually when you're good, so we can skip this time. Instead of doing what banks do when they abuse people. And so we can't, it's funny. We can't sit here and we complain about banks and how they act and how they treat people. We can't sit here and complain about credit and how that is and how it complains about people. But when we have the opportunity to be in the driver's seat as far as being able to help out other people and to loan and to lend and to help, we send people away. Or we don't even think about it. Not even that we send them away, we don't even think about it. It is a burden. It's not always pleasurable, I don't think, to be the person to loan or to lend, or to be the person who wants to work out, help somebody into a financial situation, work out a financial deal on a financial situation. It's not always pleasurable. It's a task on you. You have to, work something out with the people. You have to be a little bit business-like, but the benefits are so much better for both parties. You feel good because you're helping somebody else out. And at any moment in time, you can cut them a deal anytime you want to. Oh, well, it's Christmas. You don't have to pay. Or this is such and such. Or this, oh, well. And on the other side, it's beneficial for them because they don't have to have a situation of somebody who they know doesn't care about them holding their assets over them. And again, those deals can always break. I think it's a hard thing to do sometimes, or it's a hard thing to say that we should be lenders and loaners to other people in our community. But I think our community should take care of themselves, and whatever that community may be. When I'm talking about the faith community, but I'm also talking about a lot of nonprofits and other communities. I'm a part of a fraternity. There's no reason why all the fraternities and sororities don't have a large credit union that we operate. Like, it's ridiculous. I've been saying it for years. It's one fraternity and sorority that has a credit union, and the rest of us don't. It's ridiculous that I'm a part of a bunch of credit unions. None of them are churches. None of them are faith-based. So none of them have influence from a faith-based perspective where there's opportunities when we're making interest as a credit union or making loans and everything. I know a piece of that is going to go back into the community into a way that I would like. And so I do think that there's a responsibility that we may have here, but people disagree. Some people think you should never loan. You should always give away. And I don't know, that it seems like a good notion to me as well. But when you can't give away, is there an opportunity to loan? We have a person here right now who's looking to start a business. And he was like, oh man, I'm thinking about starting a business. He wanted to go out here and, he was trying to figure out a way to get money from banks or small business administration. The first thing I said to him was, you got people in your family. Let's go to them first and see whether or not they're going to sow a seed into you. And I think that's what everybody should be able to do, or everybody should want to do. Go to your family first, whether it be your blood family or your church family. And we should be able to sometimes sow seeds to one another. We do it when people go to college and we want to give them a little bit of money. They're like, hey, Johnny's going off to college. Let's sow some seeds into him and some money into him. But it would be great if we could, if we don't have the money as an institution to just pay his tuition, maybe we can pay the tuition as a loan. And instead of him paying these crazy rates where he's paying, outrageous percentages and yields that are doubling and tripling every couple of years, he can pay back the church. I think that we might need to think about this a little different. What about people who sometimes abuse their financial responsibility because of a familiar relationship? And that's the burden. There's two ways to look at this. One, that's just the risk you take. There are going to be people who act like that. There are going to be people who take on that responsibility. Here's the beautiful part about all of this stuff. And this is more of I guess this is it's just what it is. If you and I worked out a deal, if the church worked out a deal, if I right now decided to buy a house for someone, and I said, well, look, I'm going to pay for the house. and you're going to pay me back. I'm going to be your mortgage company. So I write a note. I buy the house and I write a note that says you own the house, basically, but you're paying me. I'm the owner of the house until you finish paying me off the note. And you decide, for whatever reason, that you don't have the ability to pay anymore, and you stop paying me. I will say, look, we need to pay. This is, I understand times are tough, whatever the communication may be or may not be. Or maybe you just don't want to talk to me. You don't pick up the phone, you don't respond to no letters, whatever. All right? A couple of months go by, maybe 6 months go by, you haven't paid me. What I do is I let you know, look, now I'm going to turn the loan back over to the world. I'm going to turn it over back to the bank. So I sell the house back to the bank, who then will cover the note with you. And so now if you don't pay them the note, then it goes into the traditional way of what they do. It turns into a traditional mortgage in the sense of they're going to go ahead and, work something out with you, collect on it, foreclose on it, do whatever. So that's where it goes. If somebody if they don't want to honor their relationship, and they want to change the relationship, then the relationship changes, and you can give it back over to the traditional way. But even in those situations, it's better to have a home that you're living in and you're getting ready to get foreclosed on, and you got to figure out a way for it to work, than to have never had a home at all. And that, it's better to have somewhere that you can live and stay. If you worked out a deal with me and you were able to live in a house, let's say for 4 years, while your kids went through high school, and when they graduated, you ain't had the money no more, and all of a sudden it all fell apart. It's better to have had it for them 4 years while your kids was in school than to not have had it at all. And so even in those situations, and I'm gonna bring back up the comment, even in those situations when you have people who abuse the relationship or abuse the responsibility, or they fall on hard times and they can't get the responsibility, I think it's better to give them the chance and the opportunity and then have to turn it over to somebody else than to never allow them to get the opportunity at all. Put somebody in a vehicle that they would have never been able to get into before. And then they have to make the decision from that point on. But you at least gave them the door. It's like putting a down payment on somebody, but it's not the same thing as where you just put the down payment and let them go. You built a relationship, you got them where they needed to be. You basically held somebody's hand to where they needed to go. And then they get to make the determination at that point from where they want to go. I think this is important for us to consider as the Black community. I think this is important for us to consider as the churches. That if we're truly going to be community, that we need to start providing things for one another that we know that we can do, but we may not necessarily want to do. And so that includes, again, loans and things like that. The banks, Bank of America is going to be here, but these regional banks, sometimes they're going to fail. Even the big banks sometimes are going to fail. But that's not the reason we should do it. We should do it because we should be taking care of one another. If we know that we have the funds and we know that we can save somebody, right now mortgages are like 7%, between 6 and 7%. They used to be 3%. So the amount of home that you can buy now at a 7% rate is nowhere near what you could have bought at 3%. That's the difference for a lot of people of being able to have a home and not have a home, because their monthly payment for a lot of folks doubles. So what you could have brought for $1,000 a month, now you have to pay $2,000. And if you don't have $2,000 a month worth of income to put towards a house, you're not going to be able to have a house. And so that's where a lot of people are stuck. And so if we can do something as the church, if we can do something as individuals, if we can do something as nonprofits to kind of bridge that gap, then I think that we should do it. Now, again, I don't know. There are those who disagree, and I definitely understand. But I think it's our responsibility to make sure that we take care of one another. Again, it's about being community for me. And community means to be able to get the people at their needs. I'm not in a great financial situation of where I can do all of that for my family, but I know one thing. If I ever do become in a situation where I can be a lender to my family, I would be offended if somebody went out here and got a loan from Bank of so-and-so before you came to me, and we work something out. So I can take care of you and you can take care of me because we're family, and that's what it's for. I didn't make my money just so I can just keep it for myself. I made it so that we can all do better. It's so that's me. But I think that the church is at. We need to think about that. I don't know why we don't have credit unions. And for those of us, the smaller churches that don't have money, those of us who just don't have the money to get it, I understand. But when we get into those situations, I think it impacts our whole community, puts us in a different driver's seat, so we can put our money where we want to put it. Another comment. The Bible says we're called to build one another up. Absolutely. I think two of the best things that I've seen, when we think about we think about the Christian faith, is we got to remember that the first public schools, well, not public schools, but the first schools that were really organized and out there for the public here in the United States were Christian schools, churches. There were churches, and then churches. Some churches developed them into the actual schools, and you had private schools. And when hospitals, that's the church again. Hospitals are developed by the church. First major hospitals were developed by the church. And so when we look at things like this, and what's the benefit of that? You look at a lot of the private schools or a lot of the schools that are developed by the church, and they're making sure that children who don't have can come into the schools, can come into the programs. That's when a lot of the, not all of them, but you hear about that all the time. Now they have power to add some influence over the community. They can make sure people are taught and have a safe place to go and can get a meal. And then you had the hospitals, the hospitals who decided that if you couldn't pay, because we're Christian hospitals, we have to take care of it. And so that's when you can really affect your community. And so I think if we have the ability, I think we have to go out here and do that in the banking and the financial institution. Because what could we do? To the person who got out of jail, we could put a little seed money into them so that they can start a business. To the person who is about to lose their house, we can take over their whole entire mortgage and they can pay us instead of paying them. And the days that they can't pay us because we know that they're in a struggle, maybe they can come over to the church and do some work, and maybe they can get it through that way. But we can make sure that our communities are what we want them to be, and we can influence them in the way that we want to influence them. But we have to take that responsibility. It is a headache to be a financial institution. It is a headache to be a lender. But I think that's a headache that we're supposed to do. And just like the comment said, and I'll bring it back up, it says that we are to build up one another. And building up is not easy work. All right. Well, I appreciate the comments. I know that one was a little bit, we've been doing this finance, dance here once in a while. Don't worry, it's just not going to turn into a big finance thing where we talk about it all the time. But I think those are some important topics that we need to consider. And as we get amongst other people in the faith, I think we need to go back and considering that and go back and kind of influence that. And remember, when you make a little bit, if we do this in our we're able to influence our community, and somebody comes and brings a check and says, "Hey man, why don't you sell out?" We got to stop doing that. Come on, y'all, we got to do better. All right, thank you, everyone. Again, on Thursdays, 7:00, we're here for Thursday Thirst, weekly Bible study, and on Sundays at 10:00, we are here for worship service every week. Thank you for joining us. Please come again.